Mate, whatever. This is the review for Ultimate Spider-Man Annual Issue 2 featuring Daredevil, Spider-Man, Kingpin, and all that crazy stuff, so, yeah. What is going on, guys? Welcome to this video. My name is Cameron and this is the review for Ultimate Spider-Man Annual Issue 2. Now, as you can see, I am not dying anymore. I am now better. Basically what happened is I had like a really severe hay fever sort of thing. I don't know what was going on, but yeah, I'm all better now and it's been reduced down to a slight cough. So as you can see, I've got the issue just stood there right on top. Instead of like, I don't know, it's a bit too far in the background over there maybe. I've got the lights turned off so it's a bit more like cold feeling. So yeah, I know some of you guys were a little bit concerned saying that I should have reviewed this last time. But actually, Ultimate Spider-Man Annual Issue 2 takes place between Ultimate Spider-Man Issue 96 and Ultimate Spider-Man Issue 97. So technically, it's supposed to be reviewed now, and that's why we're doing it. So if you remember the Kingpin and Moon Knight and then Spider-Man and all that crazy stuff, this issue introduces Daredevil and of course Moon Knight comes back. Now if you remember, Moon Knight actually got stabbed by Elektra during that Hammerhead saga. We also found out that Captain DeWolf of the police force is a dirty cop working with the Kingpin, and of course we haven't seen Kingpin for a while, but he also returns in this comic and everything like that. So yeah, this is obviously like a side, like it's an annual, it's a side story to like what's currently going on in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics with the whole vampire thing and the Clone Saga that's coming up next. This ties up some loose ends and we get introduced to Daredevil of the Ultimate Universe. So yeah, without any further ado guys, let's get into this review and let's go. Alright, so opening up the issue, we get into it and we join Captain Jean DeWolf once again. And the last time that we actually saw her, we discovered that she was a dirty cop working for the Kingpin. And we can see that it's picking back up from that Moon Knight storyline. You know, the one where he got stabbed by Elektra. And we also have the return of Herman Schultz, also known as the Shocker of the Ultimate Universe. Now, Shocker's character pops in and out of this Ultimate Spider-Man series throughout the sagas as this series goes on, and he's more or less one of those throwaway characters where Spider-Man can kind of just pass the time by stopping one of his crimes, and he keeps popping up, and it's a lot more of a personal relationship between him and Spider-Man because Shocker's been there since the beginning of these Ultimate Spider-Man comics. And so as a regular reader of these Ultimate Spider-Man comics, it's nice to see a familiar face from Shocker as a villain who just brings the pacing of the comic back down to a nice slow pace, a nice easy pace when it gets too crazy. Now we also saw back there that we had Foggy Nelson chipping on the situation with Shocker, telling him that if Spider-Man directly took Shocker to the police, then Shocker would most likely just be able to go to jail for quite a decent amount of time. And what I love about this comic is that it's not just directly throwing Daredevil into this comic and we're not being directly introduced to Daredevil straight away. We're actually, slowly but surely, entering Daredevil's world. So we had Foggy Nelson, who of course is the friend of Daredevil Matt Murdock. He just popped in there briefly, and so we're sort of getting eased into this Daredevil universe, and it just continues as the comic progresses, and I like that. But anyway, going back over to Captain Jean DeWolf, Spider-Man's talking to her, and you can see that Captain Jean DeWolf is literally like sort of pushing this sort of idea of going after this new villain known as the Kangaroo. And obviously Spider-Man is not supposed to go after criminals until after they've done something, and Captain DeWolf pushes so forcefully that Spider-Man ends up feeling guilty and so goes to check out the situation with Kangaroo. And it's almost as if Captain DeWolf has a personal agenda against this Kangaroo character, and of course it's because we know that she is indeed working for the Kingpin, and this Kangaroo character is probably one of the Kingpin's competition. Now really quickly, while Spider-Man is leaning against the wall there, I genuinely thought that that girl leaning out of the window was Kitty Pryde. Like, I legitimately thought that Kitty Pryde just sort of popped into the comic for no reason and then she did nothing. But it turns out that it was just a random civilian being surprised that Spider-Man was sticking to the wall outside her building. So yeah, it kind of took me by surprise. I don't know whether that's like a little Easter egg, like a little nod to the Kitty Pryde character, or whether it just so happens that this random civilian looks like Spider-Man's girlfriend. But nonetheless, moving on throughout the comic, you can see that Spider-Man has finally come into contact with Daredevil, and of course Daredevil is a lot more brutal in the Ultimate Universe, is a lot more mature, and technically Spider-Man is only 15 years old, and so Daredevil doesn't believe that Spider-Man is ready for the real world. He doesn't believe that he's ready to take on the threats of New York City and stuff like that. And so yeah, Daredevil isn't the biggest fan of Spider-Man. But as you can see on screen, we've got Matt Murdock and again Foggy Nelson in the background. And just going back to what I said earlier, like we're being introduced to Daredevil's world, sort of like the characters that take place in his life. And so we're just getting introduced to different aspects of Daredevil's life. From the superhero side with Daredevil bumping into Spider-Man, to Foggy Nelson and then Matt Murdock on all that crazy stuff. But as we get further into the issue, we now have the introduction of the Punisher of the Ultimate Universe, and we also get like a little bit of a backstory, and you can just see how awesome and badass Punisher looks in this comic in the Ultimate Universe. I mean, he's always looking like a badass, especially from the Netflix series that's about to come out soon. And now we're getting this really brutal backstory of Frank Castle in prison, and I'm not too sure whether he actually does it, but he's pretty much being taunted by this prisoner, and Frank Castle turns around and just murders the guy, or at least I think he kills him anyway, and you can just tell that I don't think Frank Castle has done this because he's like annoyed at this prison guard. I think he's more or less done it along the lines because he knew that in that moment, some way or somehow, he was able to escape that prison, and that's why he took the opportunity. So it wasn't anything to do with Frank Castle losing his temper, it was just that Frank Castle is awesome. And just seeing what's happening on screen right now, I absolutely love the chaos that the Punisher can bring to the situation. I mean, Spider-Man and Daredevil were just there fighting these guys, and next minute, there's this massive explosion, all these flames, chaos unleashed, and it's literally just from the Punisher, and that's an amazing presence to give off as a character. Now, as we get through the panels, you can see that Moon Knight joins the party and begins to start beatdowning on the Punisher, and I think this is the first time where you actually feel like Moon Knight is on the good side of the heroes. Like, really, you was a little bit neutral when you saw him beating up Spider-Man like a few issues ago and everything, and so this is the first time where you are genuinely happy to see Moon Knight, because you know that he's there to help, especially when the Punisher is firing down on Daredevil and Spider-Man. And so Moon Knight is like their only saviour at this point. Now, personally for me, something that was a little bit confusing is that what we're seeing on screen right now with the personality of Moon Knight lying dead on the ground with Elektra's dagger through him, this actually took place back when Moon Knight was in a coma in the hospital at the beginning of the issue. But we didn't actually have a time frame flashback notify us that this was taking place in the past. You only realise it's the past when he wakes up out of the coma back in the hospital. And so I would have liked if the comic sort of said maybe like 9 hours ago or something along those lines, just to kind of give us a bit of perspective on why those other personalities were still seeing the Moon Knight personality dead on the floor, even though Moon Knight is currently fighting the Punisher. I mean, so it's a little bit confusing like that, but of course it made sense eventually. But it would have just been something that kind of helped us as the readers understand what was going on. And now getting into the most badass moment of the entire issue is when Kangaroo thinks that all of the heroes have forgotten about him, and then Daredevil appears standing over him in the smoke, and it was just one of the most badass moments of the entire issue, and it panned out so well. I mean, Kangaroo just did not know what was hitting him, it was awesome. But one of the things that I want to just bounce back to a second is Spider-Man's sense of humour in this comic. Obviously, it's the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. In almost every single issue of this series, Spider-Man is extremely humorous. I mean, it's Spider-Man, we know that he tells jokes, but in this comic particularly, he calls Moon Knight Moonbeam. I mean, that is one of the funniest things I've read in a while, and I just love how light-hearted Spider-Man is throughout this entire situation, especially because Daredevil is very, very serious and he's very mature. And then you get Spider-Man coming in, who just sort of treats it a little bit like a joke or a game or something. And you can just sense that Daredevil doesn't like that from Spider-Man. But that's just Spider-Man, and it's great. But we've only taken a couple of seconds to calm down and sort of slow the pace a little bit. The comic does a quick turnaround with Punisher blasting a shot straight through the back of Captain Jean DeWolf. And of course, Spider-Man's there, and Spider-Man, to be honest, I was going to argue that Spider-Man's spider sense didn't go off, but technically it wasn't Spider-Man that was in danger since the bullet was aiming for Captain DeWolf. So yeah, you can see on screen that Spider-Man is extremely annoyed at what's just happened. He starts laying the beat down on Punisher, and that's when it's revealed to Spider-Man by both Daredevil and the Punisher that Captain DeWolf was a dirty cop working for the Kingpin. And that is another reason why Daredevil doesn't think that Spider-Man is ready for the real world, because Punisher and Daredevil, two veteran heroes, or, well, I say Punisher's a hero, already knew that Captain DeWolf was a dirty cop, and Spider-Man just couldn't see it. And it's obviously because Spider-Man is a younger character, he's a little bit more naive when it comes to things like that. And so as a reader of this comic, that was extremely shocking to see Captain DeWolf just get mowed down by a gun like that. It was completely unexpected, and just adds to the reason as to why this comic is so good, because it contains a lot of shock factors. as well as having some serious moments and events that carry out from this issue into the future of this comic series. And then, of course, the issue closes up with the final page of Daredevil actually sneaking into Moon Knight's place and coming up with the idea to form a team, and it's awesome. Thank you guys for watching, thank you guys for reading along this issue with me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And now back to me on camera, giving my highlights of the issue. Oh no. That is probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me, witnessing that in slow motion before my eyes. Okay, so that is the end of Ultimate Spider-Man Annual Issue 2. We do have Annual Issue 3, which takes place a little bit further into the Ultimate Spider-Man series. And so, yeah, we'll get to that very soon. But one of the most jarring things about this issue was that something I completely forgot about is that the annual Ultimate Spider-Man comics have completely different art styles. Like, I opened this comic and was really surprised with the differentiation from the Mark Bagley art style to this art style in this Ultimate Spider-Man Annual Issue 2 comic. But other than the art style, we also got introduced to Daredevil, and it's very, very awesome to finally see Daredevil in these Ultimate Spider-Man comics. I mean, I think we've seen him briefly before, and we saw him with Foggy Nelson, who we all know from the Netflix Daredevil series. I mean, Daredevil is such a popular character now just because of that Netflix series, so you feel a lot more connected to his character in a way, so it's nice. And I think right off the bat they made it clear that Matt Murdock does not like Kingpin at all, so he's willing to do anything to sort of go against Kingpin. And it was brutally shown in this comic, especially with that villain known as the Kangaroo. I mean, Daredevil went crazy on him, and there was this one badass moment where Kangaroo thought that all the superheroes forgot about him, and then Daredevil was just there like, no, I didn't forget about you. And then he just proceeded to beat the crap out of him, and it was just awesome. Now, I think it's really important that we've got to realise that now Jean DeWolf has been shot, by the way, which was a massive shocker, especially with, obviously, the Punisher actually doing it. Captain DeWolf is no longer in these Ultimate Spider-Man comics. I mean, she has been killed. Or, well, at least she's been shot anyway. And so that's going to carry over into the continuation of the Ultimate Spider-Man series in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 97 and so on. Now, as for the Punisher, it was awesome to see like where he came from, and of course the Punisher, we know him again from the Daredevil Netflix series. We feel a lot more connected to his character. We know pretty much more like what like the depths of his character is, like the details and why he is the way he is, and so you felt a lot more connected to him as well, especially in the prison. You just knew that he was going to beat the crap out of that guy, and instead I think he actually killed him. But there's no change. Punisher is still a badass. I'm starting to realise that this comic is just filled with a lot of badassery. I mean, especially Kingpin approaching Kangaroo in that restaurant, telling him that he's going to do something to him, and then it comes down as that. Yeah, I'm hoping that we're going to see some aftermath from Kingpin since Captain DeWolf has just been shot. I mean, technically, she was sort of seeing Kingpin or like sleeping with him or something along those lines. So it'd be interesting to see if Kingpin is like really that bothered about Captain DeWolf, or whether she was just like an asset to him, if you get what I mean. So yeah, I really liked it how they depicted that Moon Knight has been killed. I mean, like one of his personalities in his head actually lying there with one of Elektra's daggers in his stomach. It's in his stomach. Yeah, I liked how that was depicted, and just the rest of the personalities just sort of standing around trying to wake him up. And then, of course, when he got woke up, he continued his crusade and everything. And Daredevil did say that he's going to put together a team, especially with Moon Knight, Daredevil. Yeah, we're going to see that in the future of the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, and it's going to be, if I remember, a team of Doctor Strange, Daredevil, the Moon Knight, and then Spider-Man shows up, and Spider-Man and Daredevil really do not get along in the Ultimate Universe. I mean, they technically almost start fighting each other. They hate each other that much. But one of my favourite things about the comic is that it wasn't just some random side thing like an annual where it doesn't mean anything to the story. It actually cleared up and caused some pretty crazy events, and so you feel like this issue had an actual impact on what's going to happen for the future of the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, and I really like that. So for that, I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10. There was a lot of action, as I've already said, a lot of badassery, a lot of characters being introduced and reintroduced, and also being exited from these Ultimate Spider-Man comics, like Captain DeWolf being shot, Daredevil entering the comics, Moon Knight coming back, and then of course the Punisher as well. It was just awesome. So guys, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can check me out on Instagram. The link is in the description. And of course, remember, there is a second YouTube channel that I have The link is in the description for that as well. I hope you guys check that out. It's awesome, or I'm enjoying making videos on it anyway. I still need to upload a new one, but I'm working on it, believe me, I am. Anyway guys, if you want more of these videos on this YouTube channel, thank you for... Anyway guys, if you want more of these videos, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, let me know what you thought of this issue in the comments below, and I'll see you in my next video. See you later.